There we are.
Good.
So,
There we are.
Rashmi, you and I met at the AI Summit, which was awesome, which was really cool, which I've posted about. Keen though, what did you think of AI Summit?
I thought it was a great event. I also very much liked the fact that there were speakers from not just the industry, but also, people from the academia, for example,
Mm,
talking about the theoretical aspects of it, the practical aspects of it. I very much enjoyed the startup and investor stage to also see, where the investors are looking to invest going forward, and the tips that they were giving. I think those were very, very useful, but also very practical. The no nonsense chats that, for example. I am forgetting the name now, but Edward Keelan, I believe, he had said something that the tips that he gave, I thought that those were very useful even for any entrepreneur not doing AI. So that was sort of very grounding in the sense that, just because AI is the hype and AI is everywhere, that does not mean you need to lose your head about it, right? You
mm,
still need to stay grounded in common sense and do the right thing. What is the value? What is the purpose? What problems are you solving? And how are you going to be profitable? And things like, try and keep that profitability in mind, even in a 6 month, 12 months timeline, and not just think, oh, I need funding and, I can go on investing. So I thought that those were very useful things to say. I very much enjoyed the session from Neil Lawrence. And when he was talking about the fact that humans will always be interested in other humans, I thought that
yeah,
that was a very heartening statement, because I have always believed I love technology, and I love the technology for the impact that it makes on human lives.
yeah,
But therefore, it remains important to keep that human aspect in mind, right? That
yeah.
it's people who make the technology, it's people who use the technology. And I think that in that sense, the fact that AI is such a game changer when it comes to improving your productivity and to be able to do more with, the resources that we have, the people, the creativity, the, innovation, there's like more room for it.
Mm.
That's how I want to look at that also, that the human aspects of all our interactions, that they are valuable, and that AI sort of creates more room for those interactions and for that innovation.
I think that does a lot to kind of ease the fear mongering around AI and how it's going to replace everybody and how we're all going to be dispersed, right? And while that is certainly the case for a number of jobs, entry-level software engineering, for example, hearing you talk about, so I missed that talk with Lawrence, I didn't catch that one, but hearing him talk about and hearing you repeat human to human interaction is always going to be there. I think that does a lot to kind of dispel the AI evolution and the AI sort of taking over
Yeah,
theory.
but I think that, like if you look through the history of civilization, and, we are saying that this is the fourth revolution and what have you, but there is a natural evolution that takes place in terms of what jobs we do, right? Like 50
Mm,
years ago, there were not that many software engineers.
yeah.
Uh, and the fact that, like now all of us have technology in our lives, in every aspect of our lives, it's made lives better. And I think that you also need to think that AI is probably going to bring more in that space, that, our quality of life gets better, the quality of our thinking gets better, because some of the repetitive things can be, outsourced,
Yeah.
if you were.
So with this revolution, this fourth revolution, as you call it, do you feel like the feelings and the fears and thoughts around it, they existed in previous revolutions as
Yes.
well?
Yes, absolutely. I think that when, manufacturing got all automated and machines and all of that, there was a lot of fear there as well, right? That
Mm,
everything is going to be machine made, and there's not going to be any appreciation for really handmade stuff. But that's not the case. I think that, you see that that can coexist.
yeah.
And I think it's going to be the same going forward. And who knows what future holds, right?
Are you familiar with a website called Etsy?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so that's exactly what you're talking about, right? So that
Right.
unique, bespoke, personalized thing that you can buy on Etsy that you can't buy on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think that, I mean, I think people fear change, right?
Mm.
Everybody wants change, but nobody wants to change. Uh, and that is at the root of it. And I think for me personally, like a few years ago, I had done this very interesting training, and that talked about this concept of VUCA. I don't know if you're familiar with that. VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So the premise of the training was that that's the world that we live in. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And I think that as a leader, I think that that is happening more and more because the pace of change is really high, right? All these new things coming up, like uh, if you look at phone models, right? Smartphones, like every year, every 3 months, things are outdated. So things are moving faster and faster, and that's very difficult to then say, okay, how do you keep up with that? And I think that the trick to that is to keep in mind that it's like an old saying, right? Change is a constant. Change is the only constant. So as soon as you accept that and you lean into that growth mindset, that you accept that you will not always know everything, but that you're open to learn, I think that's what takes the fear away. So
Yeah.
I came back from that AI summit having learned more and having heard these messages. I'm very excited to see, how we're going to practically use that more and more in our daily lives.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah, and obviously doing what I do as a profession, so we build custom software for people, right? I'm talking to founders and VP of software every day about new initiatives, new projects, new implementations within an existing tech stack that AI is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, projects that I would have never have even thought of. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And the founders choosing us to build it for them, right? So I get to see firsthand some of these practical AI things in motion, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you said it just then. You said like you're thinking about this as a leader, right? So that's the day job. So one thing that you mentioned to me when we met at AI Summit is reverse mentoring. So do you want to just cover that a bit? Tell me what it is and why you find it so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of also just accidentally rolled into that because when I worked at Oracle, which was like 15 years, almost 15 years that I worked there, they had a very strong mentoring program, and I signed up to be a mentor. But I have also had very many lovely mentors over my 26 years in the IT industry.
Yeah.
Um, and I realized that, when I mentor other people and younger people, I also learned from them. There were times when I, as a leader, was, doing things or uh, thinking of programs or, how could we do something to increase the engagement of the employees. But then, one of the people that I mentored, he gave me feedback that actually, even though our intentions were right as what we were trying
Mm.
to do this team building and increasing engagement, it wasn't really what they were looking for. They would have preferred to, like have something else. And I thought, oh, that's very valuable. I like that input. And from then on, I think that was the first time that I actually had this deep conversation and I acknowledge to myself that, okay, there are blind spots or there are things that I can learn from this young person. And since then, I actively also seek out bright young people to learn from them. What is it that's going on in their world? How are they thinking about things?
Mm.
um, and it's also very rewarding and very assuring to sometimes see. It makes me hopeful for the future of our of humankind, if you will,
Yeah.
because like our generation, I think you see so many problems and really global problems, right? Climate change and all the conflict across the world, refugees, you name it. And I think that when I listen to some of these people and their perspectives and how they look at the world, I think it's so interesting to hear how they can be assertive, but that they also are not really uh, not yeah, not power hungry, but then looking for collaboration, looking for solutions that would be peaceful, looking for innovation that's, going to make lives better.
Mm,
Yeah, it's a great thing. So
yeah.
I think that as somebody who champions diversity and inclusion, and gender diversity is of course the biggest one, because there I feel that women are not a minority in the society, so they should not be a minority, whether it comes to tech or finance or
Mm.
any other sector of work life. But then ageism is another way of looking at that diversity, right? Just like any other aspect, like diversity comes in many shapes and forms. So
Yeah.
I think giving a voice to younger people and respecting their opinion and taking them seriously, that bridges the generational divide. And I think that in my teams, I think that that has also led to great retention as well, right? Like um, I have led global teams in India, for example, where people, hop jobs within a year or two, but then if they feel that they're heard and valued and that they are able to make an impact, even while they don't have, you know, 10-year experience, they could do
Mm.
something, do small innovations in improving how a team is doing their delivery. I think that that really helps in creating that engagement and yeah.
You know what? I couldn't agree more when you talk about the different mentality, the different way of thinking, different viewpoints from the younger generation, for sure. I mean, there's so many people that follow the status quo in the corporate world and they do things a certain way because that's how the company has always done them and it's worked. But when you get somebody new coming that challenges and it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, I think that's a good place to be, right? Because then you get to see things from a different point of view. You can actually sit up from your desk for a minute and think about a different route to go rather than, right, okay, this is the task, this is the problem, this is the way I'm going to go with it because that's just a tried and tested method. But when someone else comes in with no context and they're like, well, have you tried it this way? Have you tried it that way? I think it's really, really interesting. So my cousin he has recently retrained himself from being a manual worker into a software dev in the past 2 years. So his brain, he didn't come through university and school and learning computer science, but he's now working at a big bank here in London, one of the biggest in London, as a software dev. And he's awesome. He's flying. But everybody else in his cohort who came through that kind of same level all went to uni to do computer science. Have all come through that kind of same pattern on that same journey into the corporate world. But he's flying, and his brain just works differently. And
Yeah.
I think hats off to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have seen this so many times. I had a young tester in the team, and he just like, his brain just works differently. But he always challenged the developers to, think about scenarios which were like really edge cases and like really question if this, things were being done the right way, etc. And I mean, within no time, he was like one of the most well-respected, people in the team. So I think that, recognizing talent and acknowledging them and being open to learn from them is a great quality. I always encourage people to,
Yeah.
buddy up with a younger person, and it's usually a win-win both ways.
Yeah, yeah, definitely give them a voice. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Don't stifle them. Yeah, absolutely. So something else I wanted to talk to you about, the role of VP of engineering or engineering leader, software, that layer of position within a company is really interesting to me because there's a lot that goes on from what we're talking about now, from the younger people coming in or the new people coming into the business and the devs that are managed. But then there's also a layer above that as well, right? So there's the board, or there's a CTO, or there's a VP if you're an engineering leader. So that role really does interest me because it's kind of sandwiched in the middle, right? And if you're a small company, that role can mean something very, very different to if you're a 10,000 person company. I'm aware of that. But can you just talk a little bit about the kind of work that goes into that role from your perspective? I mean, you mentioned Oracle. I know you're not at Oracle now, but you've had some good experience. What kind of firefighting do you have to do? What do you prioritize? Is it top down? Is it
Yeah.
bottom up?
Yeah, I think that what I really like about this role is that communication is really key in this role, right? You have to communicate, manage upwards, and you have to manage downwards, right? And that means that sometimes you have to shield your teams, right? Because there's pressure coming from upward, from above, that, some certain things need to get done. You need to translate that to the teams below you. And what you need to also do is signal to, the C level or to the board what exactly is going on at the ground level. You need to translate that technical, these are the bugs, these are the incidents, that's what happened, this or that. How do you translate that in a business context? Like, okay, if we have tech debt, what is that going to mean, right? If that's going to slow down our velocity, then why do we need to carve out room for tech debt? And if we do that, what gains are going to be made by reducing tech debt in business terms, right? Because that is that's not always straightforward. And the same way, like if the priorities are changing or the business is thinking of doing something differently or going to new territories or what have you, sometimes engineers might feel that, okay, this is not fully relevant for me, but
Mm,
it is always very important to give context to the engineering team so that they know, okay, this is the direction we're moving on. And if there is pressure to do something, why is there pressure to do something, right?
mm,
um, if you're supporting your customers, and I've been in situations where I'm currently at a scale up, and small customers become bigger customers, and initially they're happy with whatever is going on, but then there comes a point in time when performance and reliability becomes paramount, that is the important part. And then you have to balance the short term versus the long term. Are you going to focus on feature delivery, because that there's always need for that,
yeah.
but then how are you going to do that while you're making sure that you're running the businesses of the customers 24/7? So I think that this is a very interesting role in the fact, due to the nature that it is so multifaceted, that you're
Mm,
talking with the business, that you're talking about stakeholders that are internal and external, but not directly uh, fully up to speed on what's going on in the engineering teams, and the other way around, right? So I personally really enjoy this role. I like the fact that there's so many things that you can do with a role like this.
VUCA,
Yeah.
right?
Hookah. Exactly, exactly. And I think that one of the things, besides the fact that you need to acknowledge that change is a constant, you will not know everything all the time. I think that that is also very important to say that to the people around you. Like, I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah.
You have to be authentic while you're doing this. You cannot be, um, at least for me, I don't like to have a hidden agenda, right? You have to be transparent. You have to be transparent to the people above you, and you have to be transparent to the people below you. And you will not always know the answer. You can have an idea, you can get the people together and say, okay, this is the problem. How are we going to solve this?
Mm.
But you can't be know-it-all.
So, how does somebody in that kind of a role lead with authenticity? And this is really aimed at you because on your LinkedIn profile, this is what you talk about in your summary, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, authenticity is, being who you are and taking yourself into each situation and each interaction, right? It's about setting expectations. It's about knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, knowing what your triggers are, but telling the other people what is it that you expect from them, right? Clarity, that is, combined with authenticity, something that I strive for. So like I just gave an example, I have been in situations where somebody asks me, okay, what should we do now? And, like in the moment, maybe I don't have an answer, that I
Mm,
will say, okay, I don't know this. But what do you think about it? And how can we go about solving this? And who do we need to involve in finding a solution to a problem? I think that is a key one. Also, like having clarity of purpose yourself, that why is it that you're doing something? Why is it that, you want to lead people? If you can articulate that to the people, like it's also a privilege to be able to lead people, right?
yeah.
If you're a leader, you need people to follow you.
Yeah.
And people will only follow you if they understand and appreciate what is it that you're trying to achieve. So I think that that is for me, that's what it means to be an authentic leader.
Mm.
And when I say that, what is my purpose in being a leader is actually to serve people. I want people to, get to their best potential, be the best versions of themselves. And it makes me very happy to be able to contribute to their personal and professional growth. Right. So, yeah,
I
I
often
think
see
that's
the
what.
job title on LinkedIn, people call themselves servant leader.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
I
cool.
mean, yeah, I think servant leadership is absolutely something that I think I believe in, but I also, there's so many different things that you do as a leader. I am also a big fan of situational leadership, right? Not everybody can be led the same way. So you need to, as a leader, adapt to the people that you're leading, your the leadership style. Like for somebody, I've led people who are older than me, have more experience than me. You lead them a different way than somebody who's junior,
Yeah,
or what have you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I think it's important you made that one. So, not just since the pandemic, and I'm going to stop talking about that now because it's been a few years, but not even before that. Distributed teams were not a new thing. Distributed teams have been the norm for a long, long time, especially in the startup world, and then obviously corporates have now adopted that as well. So, how do you, or how does one go about hiring, training, retaining people that you never meet?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think, thank God for all the tooling around that, right? Like video calls, live coding platforms, what have you. Um, I think it starts with having a clear idea of what your team culture is. What kind of person would you like to have on your team who's going to be a good fit, right?
Mm,
Um, Once like besides the technical ability, and I have always said that, for me, it is not something what one can do today, what experience they have today, unless it is domain experience, right? Like that is very key. If you're talking about verticals, then that's extremely useful.
mm.
But besides that, how does one learn? How curious are they? How can they think logically? Can they, deliver under pressure? Do they know how to build relationships?
What's the
Those are
potential?
the things. Yeah, that's something that I focus on very much, because I think that, if it is somebody who has studied computer science or comes from a background that they can, that they've proven themselves to some extent. And I have also done a lot of graduate hiring for that matter,
Okay.
in which case, you have to train them from ground up. And I think that attitude is more important in that case than, what exactly it is that they have learned. Do they know Java? Yes or no? Do they know databases? Yes or no?
Mm.
Because that one can learn. But that holds true also for senior roles. I think that that's important. And once you know, okay, this is the kind of person that you're looking for, you also need to know what good looks like. And hopefully, in your interview panel, you have people who set the bar in your current team who could be involved in that interview process to, judge how good a candidate is.
Mm.
What I like to do is like a debrief after everybody has done their interviews, and that if there's any person in the team who has seen any red flags with the candidate, that we discuss those, and that,
As a group.
sometimes as a group, yes, and that we also sometimes go back and check on those red flags if, somebody thinks, oh, this person's, job hopping too much, or this
Yeah.
person seemed, avoiding conflict avoiding, or what have you. Those are important things to discuss and to get back and get clarity, because I think a wrong hire is so much more expensive, in my view. Like for me, I would like to hire people who are going to stay for a long time, who are going to contribute, who are going to grow and, flourish themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very mindful of, how we hire people and what kind of people you hire. How are you raising the bar? How are you making sure that it's going to be a cultural fit in the team?
And that's the point, raising the bar. We should only hire people that are going to raise the current bar rather than fall just below it or just meet that standard. They should help us keep raising the bar, right? That's the point. I think Stephen Bartlett talks about that, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Key word you just mentioned, culture. So a lot of the time, culture, from what I've heard from people, is words written on a wall or words written on a website. So when you're interviewing and it comes down to the culture part, whether it's a culture test or a panel, how do you know if somebody's going to be a good culture fit when you're video interviewing them? They're in a different time zone, they're from a different country, and they could be saying anything on the call, saying what you want to hear. How do you decipher who is going to be really good for your culture and level that bar up?
Well, the things that I value, I try to ask them questions around that, right? Like for me, curiosity and lifelong learning is a value that I live with, or that's what I also tell people. I tell people, take an hour every week, learn something new. Just like block that time, go and learn. And then I ask people, how do you learn? What's the last thing that you've learned?
Mm,
Um, and then, sometimes they come up with something which can be completely outside of their technical expertise, right? Somebody tells me, oh, I'm learning how to skateboard, and, I'm 33 years old, and I've always been fascinated, and finally I'm doing this. And I think here's somebody who's willing to go out of their comfort zone and try something new and know that they're not going to be good at it from the day one, but they're willing to invest time and energy.
mm.
So that's something that, like, those kind of questions are important, and that could be different for different teams. I don't know what it is that somebody else would be looking for,
Yeah,
but ask those questions and dig deeper, like where sometimes, of course, people, when they're looking for a job, they can go to a website and now to chat gpt and say, oh, this is how I'm going to prepare for my interview. But ask questions about how do they make judgments, ask questions about how do they show empathy, and drill deeper, and then you find out whether somebody is being authentic and sharing a true story, or is it just something, oh, I've like practiced
yeah,
theoretically and I know
yeah. Start
this is
reading off
the
the ChatGPT
socially
manuscript.
desirable answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Okay, that's really interesting. I'm fascinated by that topic. Okay, so Rashmi, I want to bookend this conversation by talking about AI one last time. We spoke about AI Summit and we spoke about some of the key takeaways. Where do you think we're headed as an industry in this new AI world? Because it is here to stay. It's not a fad. So, what does the world look like in 5 years' time?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you how the world looks like in 5 years' time. I would
Yeah.
make a lot of money with that, huh? I think that I don't know how exactly the world is going to look like, Joe, but what I think is that I used this analogy earlier, right? Like when I was a student, I did not have a smartphone or a mobile phone, at my disposal. I think that given the fact that the younger generation is now growing up digitally native, that is going to, like really make the world look different in 5 years' time, right? Like I cannot predict how the changes will go down, but I think some of these things which were said in that AI summit, which I also mentioned earlier, garbage in, garbage out will stand true, right? The quality of your data is going to determine how good, your predictive models are, how good your LLMs are, etc. We have to actively work towards reducing the bias in AI, right? Like a few years ago, even if you on Google searched for the image of a doctor, a man showed up. While I know that at least in the Netherlands, and I believe also in Australia, I heard recently, there are more female doctors than male doctors.
Hmm.
So those kind of things we need to actively be aware of and work towards that we reduce that, because otherwise it is going to look like a biased world also in the AI. Um, and I think we need to be prepared of some surprising new leaps and jumps that are going to happen. I mean, 50 years ago, could somebody have predicted that we would all be walking around with a smartphone and be
Yeah,
able to call anybody in any corner of the world? I don't think so. So yeah,
yeah.
the change is only going to be faster.
I'm also excited about change for sure. I think change for change's sake isn't always necessary, but I think
Exactly.
change for good and change for necessity is a good thing. My concerns lie more in the kind of usage requirements or the compute power that's going to be required for AI or other tech, these LLMs or just think about these huge mega data centers that are being built, and the kind of deforestation and the villages and communities that are being destroyed for a huge, ugly warehouse. But
Yes.
then also, I have this image in my head of the world looking more like a raisin because we're sucking all the energy out of it. That's my concern, my high level of concern, especially with young kids and the kind of world they're growing up in as well. That's my concern, and I know there's a lot going on in the industry to be able to combat that. But that,
Yes,
yeah, that's
and
just
I
top of mind.
believe I believe that, just like you know at least here in the Netherlands, almost all households now have solar panels and are generating their own energy to some extent, right? I think that there will be innovative solutions that will figure out a way to not have deforestation and such extensive, usage of resources and
Mm,
limited resources that we have on this planet. Um, but what I also think is that my concern, I share that concern, but my concern also is that especially the younger generation and kids, that I hope that we will be able to limit screen time and not have them only rely on something like AI and these LLMs to do their homework and just to find answers and what have you. Because I think what makes us so successful as a species is that we have a brain and we are curious,
yeah,
and we need to keep that curiosity alive and the creativity alive. And I was reading about some studies that have been done that like this the brain development of young children is different when they are leaning too much on these digital devices.
yeah,
So that is my big concern, that people will, like, you and I can talk about it, and I'm talking about bias, and we know about hallucinations of these models, but these young children do not,
yeah.
right? And that is something that we need to be very aware of, that
They
we
take it
tell
for
them,
gold.
yeah, they take it, they think this is the answer.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, it's so true.
yeah,
Talking about that screen time and digitalization, my wife and I were chatting the other day. So we both grew up in the 90s, and before smartphones, we would have a VHS video that you'd have to put on the TV. There was no DVD even, so Blockbuster was kind of this cool new thing. You'd have to go outside and climb a tree. There was no screens indoors. Do you know what I mean? That
yeah.
that world, I think we're moving further away from. But that's where we form some of the best connections.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's one thing that I like. We limit screen time in our household for all of us. So, I think parents should also be aware that if you're on your device all the time, then you can't tell your child to not be on a device. So
100%.
we have device-free dinners. We have days that we say, okay, no devices, just hang out with each other. And there are times, of course, that my daughter, she's playing a game, and then she's like, oh, can I have 15 more minutes? And then I also say no. And then, 10 minutes later, she's like, I'm bored. And I say, this is great. I love it that you're bored. Be bored. Because when you're bored, when you have an idle mind, that's when the creativity sparks.
Yeah,
Uh, right? That's when you think, okay, you know what? I'm going to draw something, or I'm going to build something with Lego, or
yeah,
whatever it is that, play. That is so important. So, yeah,
absolutely. Even as
yeah.
adults, we should
And
give
even as
time to
adults,
play as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
that goes back to
Absolutely.
the continuous learning thing you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Rashmi, I could talk to you for hours. This has been really, really fun. So thank you so much.
Same
I'm
here.
glad that we managed to do this. It was lovely to meet you in person as well at the AI Summit.
Yes.
And I appreciate your insights today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joe. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation.